Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this ENGIE studio interview at Asia Utility Week 2016. My name is Denise, and with me in the studio I've got Csilla Kohalmi-Monfils, and you are EVP Strategy and New Business at ENGIE Asia Pacific. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you.
So I think what we'll be discussing is basically ENGIE's plans going forward, strategies going forward, and any opportunities that the company foresees in the future. So my first question would be, what are the major projects that ENGIE Asia Pacific has planned for the next few years? Anything exciting up the company's sleeve?
Yes, absolutely. The biggest project the company is doing right now is a complete reorganization and redirection of our activities.
Right.
So that's actually what's taking up all of our energy. We used to be a very much centralized, large power generator company, and we have to move in the direction of being much more decentralized, much more renewable, much more distributed energy, and much more services, much more customer-centric solutions. So it's a big change for us.
Right.
And it means a lot of changes in the organization, in the way we look at the markets, in the way we deal with our stakeholders. So it's all very exciting.
Let's go back to what is driving that need. What is driving this change at ENGIE at the moment?
Well, I guess the industry is driving this need. I mean, the whole energy industry, as we see it, we already see it happening in Europe, the big energy transition. The companies have been hit very hard. All of the European companies have been hit very hard. Even though that's not the reality yet in Asia, the energy transition nevertheless is still happening everywhere in the world, just in different means.
Yeah.
And actually it's giving amazing opportunities to countries in development who are now going to be able to leapfrog some of those evolutionary stages that some of the other countries have experienced.
Yeah.
So countries in this region, for example Myanmar, which currently has 30% electrification, meaning 70% of people do not have electricity, they're never going to see the huge transmission grids coming into every single village. They will have decentralized solutions on solar. They will never see a paper bill in their life, and all the back office that you need for that, they will be paying for it on their mobile phones. So it's an amazing, exciting transition that they're going through.
So there seems to be a lot of opportunities for both the company and for the customers. Let's just go back to opportunities for the company. Are there going to be additional revenue streams or any other opportunities that the company will be snapping up in the future? And then I'll move on to the opportunities for customers. But let's first talk about the opportunities that the company is wanting to snap up after going through this transformation.
Well, I think that's the biggest challenge of this whole transition, is that it's not that we can really foresee what those additional revenues will be. We're exploring a lot of different new business models, a lot of new different products and services that we want to provide. We're in constant exploration mode, and unlike in our traditional business where we pretty much could project cash flows to the next 25 years, in a very exact manner. When you're building a coal-fired power plant, that's not the life today. So you really cannot do that, and you really have to sort of try something and see if it works and then scale up. So right now we're doing a lot of pilot projects in a lot of different areas, and then whichever one proves its concept, we plan to go and really scale up.
All right. Customers, what can they expect at the end of the day?
Well, I think customers are the kings right now in the energy business. I mean, it used to be that you just paid your electricity bill at the end of the month, and you didn't really much care about what that was. You didn't really much know about how that's made. You didn't need to know. Sometimes you got mad and you didn't like your bill, but there was not much you could do about it. Today, it's very different. The consumer is becoming a prosumer. Through all the digital technologies, they can monitor their own consumption, they can set their own targets, they can get very knowledgeable about how to save electricity, they can be tempted by different offers. And of course, not talking about the ones in Myanmar that are going to get electricity for the first time.
Yeah,
and it's not going to be like in many of these countries where they've had electricity for 2 hours a day. They're going to go straight to the real thing. And that's going to change their lives in a very deep way.
Absolutely. Digital technologies aimed at customer engagement, is that one of the strategies that ENGIE is looking at?
Absolutely. In our retail operations, I think you die without that. I mean, the customer now is really expecting everything digital. So everybody has to be on top of their game in terms of digital technologies. But I think the big difference being is that whereas this is now available already to most consumers in the developed world, is that the developing world, just the same way as they adopted mobile phones before ever having a landline, they're going to be adopting these digital energy offers before they even know what it used to be like for those of us that just paid the bill at the end of the month.
It's encouraging. Let's talk about numbers. Perhaps you can share some of those with us. Are there any exciting projects up the company sleeve with regards to perhaps renewables, perhaps energy efficiency levels? Reveal some of your numbers if you've got them.
Well, I'm not sure I want to reveal any numbers.
Or any exciting plans that you'd like to share with us.
I mean, in terms of renewables, we definitely have very ambitious targets on a global level, right? So we definitely have targets with regards to achieving 50% renewable generation in the next 20 years or something like that. In Asia Pacific, obviously, we are following any and every renewable project that we can. It just so happens that a lot of these, for example, the solar PV projects, we're not competitive compared to some of the much smaller and local players. So I think we need to find our niche where our expertise, which is really developing large, complex projects, can come across and can give us value added. And at the same time, we need to become a lot more agile and start being able to do the much smaller projects better as well.
Yeah, absolutely. How will the removal of subsidies improve energy development, in your opinion?
Well, I think it will improve it by lots. I mean, especially in this region, the subsidies are enormous, and really it takes away the consumer's perception or appreciation of how much energy costs. Therefore, they're not incentivized to save, they're not incentivized for energy efficiency. Even companies we see, because energy is so cheap, they're not necessarily taken by energy efficiency offers just because it's not a big part of their budget. So I think this is very important for the region to remove these subsidies, especially because there's a social welfare aspect, of course, which is the reason why they're keeping them, but I think you're not supposed to mix the energy policy with your welfare policy. Currently, these subsidies, 50% of them go to the top 20% who really don't need it. Only 7% of these subsidies are actually going to the bottom 20%. So, which are the ones who need it. So if you think about it, through a well-targeted welfare policy, you could double that for the needy and still save 85% of that budget that you currently have in subsidizing. And you could put that to much better use into the new technologies, into the renewables, because right now these subsidies are for the fossil fuels. That's the worst of it. They're not even for the renewables.
Which is then the direction everyone wants to go in, really, I suppose.
And which is why renewables in this region haven't taken off in a big step way, because they have not been able to put in those incentive schemes that they have done in Europe and Australia. Those incentive schemes are missing right now. That technology still needs that incentive, especially in face of a subsidized fossil fuel alternative.
Okay. Well, I think you've partly answered my next question, which is what policies are creating inefficiencies, and when do you foresee these being removed? Do you want to expand on that and maybe give us a bit more insight?
Well, definitely, the subsidy policies are all hindering the whole transformation process. Definitely. Other than that, I wouldn't say that there's specific policies that are impending. It's more the amalgam or the whole ecosystem of policies, which is so complex and so many silos and so many different ministries and regulators, and I don't know what you need to get. There's just so much red tape that to get off a project from the ground is really, really difficult. I mean, I think this is what they call the ease of doing business index for energy projects. This in the region is mostly terrible. So it's a question of streamlining all of that and sort of being more project-centric in these or investment-centric in these policies rather than regulator-centric silos.
And when do you foresee these being removed, if ever?
Good question. Good question. We are constantly trying to educate the regulators and the stakeholders on how this could be done better. It's really not an easy way of doing it. And so the other side is not the policies that need to be removed, but like I said, it's the policies that need to be implemented. So there should be a lot more policies to incentivize renewables, a lot more policies, in terms of feed-in tariffs or carbon taxes or whatever. There should be a lot more policies incentivizing energy efficiency. If you think about it, now in the Philippines they have just implemented the kind of this orange tag, which shows you that this device is going to consume so much electricity per hour. Now that's very important to create awareness in the consumer society, and for the first time they're buying devices which are maybe a little bit more expensive, but over the lifetime they're going to consume so much less energy. In Europe we've had this for years, and the impact has been enormous. Here in these countries they don't have this yet. The first one I see is in the Philippines, so it's very important.
Right, and that's all really just because of policy getting in the way, just red tape.
Well, that's just because of a lack of certain policies. So there's no policy for energy efficiency, and therefore, if there's no policy, nothing happens. So if there is a policy, then all of a sudden they start implementing these things, the orange tab or the ABCDE, or they can, in countries in Europe, any manufacturer over X consumption has to have an energy manager on site. These are policies that you can implement that help a lot in creating what we call energy literacy, so that people are aware of the inefficiencies and can actually act on them.
Okay, so what are the plans now going forward? What is the vision that the company has, say, for the next, say, 5 to 10 years? Where does the company see itself?
Well, we would really like to be what we call the energy architect of this region, to really sort of form these policies and the education around energy, and be there to actually build new energy infrastructure, but also a lot of services. So we need to move away from being only the large infrastructure and centralized generation to much more renewable and much more service oriented. So we're actually doing a lot of acquisitions of service companies and doing a lot of this education about energy efficiency and these kinds of things, facility management around creating a whole ecosystem of energy.
Sure, a lot of work ahead, I'm sure. My last question for you. There are so many utilities probably in the same space as you, and probably across the globe. What would your advice be now that you are entering, this stage of transformation? Any lessons that you've learned that you could share with other utilities that are in the same space?
Well, I think the key is that we have to embrace this change. We cannot fight it. A lot of utilities seem to be thinking that the business model they've had for 100 years was working well and giving them good enough profits. I think that's not the life of the future, and we see that it is being very much disrupted. And it either can be disrupted by somebody else and you die, or you can embrace it. And you need to partner with the new startups, with these innovative companies with lots of good ideas, lots of new business models. We need to partner with them a lot more and actually go into this together.
All right. Csilla, that's all the time that we have today, but thank you so much for joining us in the studio, and I hope you've enjoyed the event.
Yes, very much. Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning into this session. If you're wanting more insight into the Asia Utility Week, please have a look at our playlist, which appears on our website, engiarati.com. Thank you.
Thank you.